I've been meaning to make a misinformation PSA for a while now. Sadly, it's one of those topics that's ever changing with new ways misinformation spreads. That said, there are some solid tactics that you can deploy to help stop it. Right away, did the information make you really angry or charged? That's a good first sign that you may need to look further into it. Misinformation tends to rely on you having an emotional reaction and sharing the info without really thinking about it. Misinformation also relies heavily on leaning into your pre-established biases. No matter how true or fitting something may sound, it could still be false information that someone came up with to make someone or something look bad. Know your biases and don't let anyone take advantage of them. Now, where did you find this information? Is it coming from a random account on a social media site that you use? Does this account cite their sources? What other claims do they make in their other posts? Do they use weasel words like experts say it's true or evidence suggests that it's true? If you can't find out where they got their info at a glance, and if it seems like the goal of their account is to incite rage, then it is a bad source. You shouldn't be taking their claims at face value, and you especially shouldn't be reposting their stuff until you look into it yourself. I know that there's probably folks out there saying, well, Mr. Smarty Pants, I don't have time to research every little potential controversial post I share. Well, then don't share them! Full stop! Don't share controversial crap if you're gonna have that mentality. If you can't do the footwork to make sure that the things you're angry about are real, then you've got no business telling other people that they should be angry too. How is that fair? Now, for those ready to do the footwork, the next section is going to go into criticizing sources. However, before we dive in, we should stop and talk about the differences between primary sources and secondary sources. A primary source is one that has first-hand knowledge about the subject. They're usually some kind of research study or the first ones on the scene with all of the fine details. A secondary source is usually an article of some kind, one that's reporting on the primary source. Depending on who the secondary source is, that could wildly change the interpretation of the primary. This is why it is very important to understand your secondary sources and whether or not they're reputable. Having a reputable secondary could mean the difference between an article reading "Cold fusion now possible" or reading "Cold fusion study reveals new possibilities." Your goal should be to find the closest source you can. If not primary, look for the first secondary source in the chain. They have the best chance of delivering the most accurate details possible to you. So, let's say this account does leave some kind of a source. Is it a primary or a secondary? What's the source's reputation? Are they known for being an accredited institution? Can you trust that what they say was tested or investigated to the best of human ability? If the source is a news site, are they interested in giving you real, unbiased news? Or does it come from a site that seems to make a lot of content geared towards making you hate other people or things? Is the article actually relevant to the subject? Or does it seem like it might have been made with ChatGPT or some other AI article writer? Does it have a human author behind it? One that you can look up and inspect their previous work? Do they leave their source at the bottom of the article detailing where they're getting their information from? If there's no source, and if their claims are completely insane, there's a very high chance that their info is bogus. If there is a source, then go check to see if that source is reputable, because sometimes similar publications will just lazily copy from each other without doing their own homework. If all else fails, you can always do some online searches to find out more about the subject. If you find nothing at all, then chances are you've been duped and been given misinfo. If you do find more, make sure to get multiple sources that back up your info, and make sure these sources are independent and reputable. After you've done a thorough checkup on these claims with all of these things that I mentioned in mind, it's a little safer to share this info. But remember, misinformation is crafty. There will always be a chance that either you missed something or earlier facts turned out to be false. In these cases, it's important to do your due diligence. Go back and delete your previous posts to stop the spread of misinformation. Now, you may be thinking about replying to any misinforming posts or quoting them in your own posts, with the goal of correcting the offending misinformation. Just don't. Very often, the goal of misinformation is to intentionally mislead the readers into believing falsehoods. you're not gonna win a morals war. Misinformers don't care if they're wrong. As for doing it to correct the public, you're not really doing that. You're just spreading the incorrect information to more eyes. And it doesn't matter how much you insist that the info is wrong, there will always be a bunch of people that are gonna look at your post and believe the lies, not you. Instead, report the post as misinformation to whatever site that you're on. If the site actually gives a crap about the content that they're hosting, they should have a means of doing that somewhere. Ultimately, the point of misinformation is to be seen. So, do your part. Be careful. Be skeptical. Don't let that garbage leave the shadows.